This is resin jointing compound, which in recent years has become the standard material for pointing patios and paving. However, if you want this to last more than just 1 or 2 years, there's an important step that you need to carry out when you're installing this that unfortunately is going to cost you time and money. And that's exactly why the professionals laying your patio today don't want you to know about it. So what is resin jointing compound? Well, it's a sand or masonry silica mixed with resin, and there's 2 types. The more professional type is where you get 2 parts of resin, you mix it together, and then it starts going hard. Nothing can stop it. Then there's more the DIY type, which is more common in your DIY shops like these, which is what's called self-setting, which means it sets once it dries out. So as long as you keep it sealed in a bag or underwater, then it will last as long as you need it to until you use it. And there's a couple of advantages of using these over a normal sand and cement mix. Firstly, they come in different colours, which means you can give a different look to your patio depending on which colour you pick. And although resin jointing compound goes hard, it doesn't get as brittle as sand and cement. But there are some drawbacks. Firstly, the cost. This is quite expensive material. For instance, this easy joint, you're not going to get much change out of £40 at your local DIY shop, and that's for 12.5 kilograms. The Seeker Fast Fix, which is another really popular one for DIYers, is a little bit cheaper, at somewhere between £26 and £32, depending on the colour, for a 15 kilogram pack. And ironically, the cheapest place I found this is not your DIY shop, it's actually on Amazon. That means that someone else can deliver it for you. I'll put the Amazon link in the description below this video to the Seeker Fast Fix. But there is another drawback, and that is, unless you install these properly, they're going to start coming out after just 2 or 3 years. Let me show you. So this is my patio, which although is 4 to 5 years old now, these problems started after just a couple of years of it going down. And as you can see, a lot of the joint compound has gone, allowing weeds and ants to get a grip between the slabs. And in some areas, there's almost no material left at all. And here is the most telling point. In others, it's actually shrunk significantly, like around this chamber cover, where the resin jointing used to be at paving level, which just means it wasn't compacted properly at installation, and now it's just broken down while it's weathered. The jointing compound that is left is now very soft, with no strength left in the material, to the point that it doesn't take much to pull it out, and it just crumbles away as you do so. So I'm now in the middle of raking out all of this old pointing so I can replace it with new compound. The other thing I do find in some areas is that the bedding water is higher than it should be. So the minimum joint depth of 20 millimeters, as stated in the instructions, I can't achieve unless I actually remove some of this sand and cement. Although I've got a few patches of this isn't the main reason why the compound has come out. It's clearly that it wasn't compacted properly when it was installed. So why is it, when it's obvious that this needs to be compacted and it's in the instructions, why is it that people aren't doing it? When I say people, I mean some contractors. Well, for 2 reasons. Firstly, to actually go around and compact this properly takes quite a long time. If you're just going to brush it in and sweep it in, you can do many square meters in half an hour. But as you'll see later on in this video, if you're going to go around and compact every inch around every paving slab properly, it takes hours. And in fact, in an hour, you can only do a few square meters. So contractors don't want to spend a day or 2 at the end of their job just putting in jointing compound. They want to get finished up and get away and get on to the next project. And 2, it's a lot cheaper because the more you compact it, the more material you have to use to cover the same area. That's why they don't like compacting it. And I thought we'd do a little bit of an experiment just to see what that difference is. But first, let me just point out on the front page of the instructions exactly what it says. It says it should be compacted using a pointing trowel or other suitable tool, because thorough compaction is essential, in bold. So if you have a contractor working for you and you notice they're just brushing it in without compacting it, let them know and tell them because if you don't, it's not going to last very long. So I thought we'd do a little bit of an experiment to see how much material you use if you just brush it in, and how much you use if you actually compact it. So I've got a bit of a mock-up here, just made out of timber, and each joint is similar in width to what I've got outside, somewhere between 10 and 15 millimeters, and depth-wise, all of these are 20 millimeters, which is exactly the same depth that seekers say you have to have your joints at least for this whole thing to work. So what I'm trying to do here is to replicate my joints in my patio, albeit in wood here. So what I'm going to do is, firstly, I'm going to wet this timber just to stop things sticking. Then I'm going to weigh this board. Then I'm going to add some material, brush it in like a lot of contractors would, and then weigh it again. That will give me the weight of material just brushed in. I'm then going to do the job properly, compact it, add some more material, and then weigh it for a second time. That means I'm going to have two weights: the weight of material just brushed in, and the weight of material brushed in, compacted, done properly. And I'm interested to see the ratio between those, and therefore how much material you can save if you don't do the job properly, and how much material it costs you if you do compact it and do it properly. Right, let's get on. I'm going to wet this and let's start adding some material. 2, 3, 2, 5. Three, 4, 8, 1. Three, 9, 3, 8. 3, 4, 8, 1 minus 1613 over 115. That's about 40% extra material if you compact it in. So with the resin already costing 30 to 40 pounds for a tub, to potentially use an extra 40% starts adding up, and for a medium-sized patio will probably mean an extra tub or two. So this is where to do this job properly will inevitably cost you more than you think. However, it will be worth it in time. While I ponder these numbers, I get on and keep raking out my fouled resin jointing material, wishing that it'd been done properly by whoever did it all those years ago. This is fairly back-breaking work, and I think probably best done in lots of short sessions rather than just try to do it all in one go. If you're going to repoint a patio that's already in place like this, you'll find that the hardest job is actually removing all the old grout. And what I found is to use a vacuum that pulls it out in conjunction with an old screwdriver is probably the best combination. And if you've got a vacuum like this, that's all very well. I mean, you could potentially use the one from your house if it works with old resin grout, and if you have permission from the person that normally uses it. Before you get the resin compound anywhere near your patio slabs, it's really important to wet the area so the material doesn't stain the dry slabs. And if the area does start drying out while you're in the process of laying it, re-wet it and have your hose on standby. And a little tip here, as the compound starts going off after an hour or so of being unpacked, dump the whole lot into a bucket of water and use it at will. This means only what you remove from the bucket can possibly go hard. And if you do tackle the job in small areas each day or so, then the material sitting in water is ready to be used when you are, and you'll find you'll have very little wastage. I found two ways of compacting the resin in the joints. Firstly, like this, use a piece of wood or plastic small enough to fit into the joint to push the sand down and compact it. And then I just finish off with a strike of the rounded end of the handle to make a slight concave on the top, and then clean the area with a brush. The second way I found that works as well is just by using a trowel and forcing as much material into the joint by piling it up above the joint and then pushing with the trowel material against material. This I found to be quicker and just as good as long as you've got plenty of excess material on the top so the trowel can help push it all in. With the finished joint relatively clean, a light spray of water across the whole area, or a heavier one while avoiding the joints, washes away those last little bits of sand and the job is complete. I left the area to dry as long as I could, then covered it with a threat of rain, which I'm glad I did because it didn't take long before the heavens opened. It's now 48 hours later and I've moved on to the next section, taking the tarpaulin with me. I had this area covered for 24 hours just to give it a chance to start drying out between the rain that we've had recently. And now it's totally cured and pretty solid and looking a lot better than it did before. And just to show you how hard it gets when it's compacted properly, this is a sample from the experiment you saw earlier, and absolutely solid and quite dense. I wonder how hard it is to snap. Okay, so not so strong in tension, but quite strong in compression. That's really dense. If the rest of my jointing comes out like this, I'm going to be very happy, and it should stay in there for some time. I hope you've enjoyed this video and you know a little bit more about resin jointing compound than you did before and the things to look out for. I will see you next time.